Hey, welcome back guys to Piero's Garage. We are continuing the project we've called Restore BMW 335i into a more reliable condition. I'm going to be taking a completely solo road trip with this car right here, 6,000 kilometers all the way down south to Florida. And I need this car to be as reliable as possible because I do not want it to break down. But either way, I will be documenting the entire journey. So today we're going to be changing all of the fluids on it. This includes engine oil, the transmission oil, the rear differential, and while we're in there, we're going to replace a lot of the coolant lines that have not already been replaced. So without further ado guys, we got to jump right into it. I've only got 6 days before I hit the road, so it is a bit of a time crunch, so let's hit it. Okay, so let's lift this car completely up in the air, front and rear, because I want to be able to roll around from the engine to the transmission to the diff. So let's set ourselves up nicely. Yes, I'm wearing flip-flops. I know it's not safe, but you know what? It is hot as shit in here. Went ahead and I removed the plastic underbelly. Let's look for any oil leaks. Okay, that's pretty amazing. This thing is dry, so I'm quite pleased with that. Now that I've got this out of the way, I'm gonna place a jack stand underneath the subframe here because the jack is in the way. Put a safety stand there, one in the back. We'll lift up the passenger side, put a safety stand on this side of the subframe, and then back on that plastic puck right in front of the rear wheel. And the car should be fully raised. Okay guys, here we go. This is my setup. I've got the car fully up in the air, plenty of space underneath to work. So we'll start with the engine oil, the coolant, transmission fluid, diff fluid. Let's hit it. Okay guys, we're underneath the car here. So we got the drain bolt for our oil pan here. I believe it's a 17 millimeter. Unfortunately, my jack stand is slightly in the way, so I'm gonna have to pick up my catch can and capture all my oil. It's not rocket science though. We're gonna get it out by hand. Very carefully, we're going to just simply catch it like that. There we go. She's draining. Let's take a closer look at this oil. Looks pretty good. I don't know how many kilometers are on this, probably around 5,000. Okay, so we'll give that enough time to drain and we'll move on to the next item. So we'll go ahead and plug this up nice and snug. We've got all of our fluids aside from coolant, which is over there in the corner. So I've got my engine oil, my new filter. I'm using Mobile One, full synthetic 0W40, and the Moly oil filter. And then for the transmission, I love Redline products. So 75W90, this is gonna go into the rear diff. I've got D6 ATF transmission fluid. This is gonna go into my 6-speed manual gearbox. Trust me guys, I was just as shocked to find out that the manual gearbox takes this stuff. Then for the cooling system, these are the remaining hoses that have not been replaced yet. So I've got the upper rad hose, the lower rad hose. I've got a brand new coolant temp sensor. This is for the cluster. Then we have intake manifold gaskets, all 6 for each runner. And then I've got my washer fluid pump, which has failed on my car. So that's very important for a road trip and safety. We do need a working washer fluid pump. I took this all from a scrapyard. Brand new extended wheel studs. I believe they're 3.5 inch long, and then brand new titanium burnt blue lug nuts. So this is a wheel bolt conversion kit. I already have that as an existing setup, but as you can tell, these lug nuts have seen better days and the wheel studs have also seen better days. Then we've got the oil filter housing gasket set, which I'm going to replace. And then for the road trip, I've got this magnetic cell phone base. We'll install that later. Then we've got Pentacene power steering fluid. This is German. Well, these are all the parts and the fluids we're gonna be installing. So let's get cracking. So let's go ahead and remove our oil filter in preparation to replace with our new Moly oil filter. So using an oil filter wrench, we'll latch onto the plastic housing and we will crack it loose. There we go. There's a lot of oil in here. I thought it would have drained and depleted into the oil pan, so that means I'm gonna have to crack the oil pan loose again just to get this excess oil removed. It's very important not to lose this centerpiece. This is a common problem. People will pick up their oil filter. This centerpiece will come out with it. The problem you run into is this centerpiece acts as a support for the filter. Without it, the filter sometimes will cave in on itself and create a restriction, and it will make like a whining sound. So if you do have an odd whining sound coming from your oil filter area, most likely this was thrown out. There we go. So that's how it should be. It should remain in there. If it does come out with your filter, then remove it and make sure you replace it. You can take a look at inside the filter, find any debris or flakes. It looks pretty clean. So go ahead and discard this. I'm just going to use this little vacuum pump to suck out the excess oil in here. And it's going to catch it in this reservoir. I use this for bleeding brakes, but it also works for sucking oil out. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the seal for the cartridge cap. So we'll go ahead and use a pick, take the seal off, it's garbage. There's also a secondary O-ring right here that needs to be removed and replaced. Same idea, just pull it off. If you do get a good oil filter, there should be brand new O-rings. There's also a brand new copper washer. So I got to drain the oil one more time because the excessive oil that was in the oil filter housing went down into the oil pan now. So either way, I'm gonna have to remove the drain plug to change the washer. We will lubricate the O-ring prior to installation because it will prevent the O-ring from getting pinched, possibly leaking. So now we can lubricate our seals. We can get our brand new oil filter. I'm going to install the filter into the oil filter housing first, and then I'm going to fill it with some oil. And it just drains anyways. It's just really to get the filter wet. And we'll go ahead and install our cartridge now. No, you... Guys, this car's got my bronze nuts in its purse. I swear to God, when I spilled that oil, I knew I was in for at least a couple hours of cleanup. Why? Let me show you. If you know anything about N54s, you know once the oil goes in there, it's not going to drain. It's going to sit in there and it's going to pond forever. It also filled up the spark plug tubes, and my spark plugs were completely drenched in oil. So I had to pull the spark plugs out. I had to clean each tube. I had to clean all the deep valleys and all the nooks and crannies in here. That took forever. I had to take off all the harness for the injectors, which I just did the injector job. Anyways, let's keep moving along with this project. Let's address the cooling system. So we're gonna pull the rad fan out. I gotta take the whole front bumper off, which is a little bit annoying. Why? Because the splitter goes underneath the rad and I cannot access the drain plug. So we're gonna have to take the front bumper off. We're also gonna have to remove the front intercooler. Then we can access that plastic Phillips drain plug, drain all of the coolant. Then we can remove our upper rad hose, our lower rad hose, and then top it up. I'm gonna show you guys how to bleed the system as well. But enough talk, let's dive right into it. And yes, I was correct. The intercooler does need to be removed because the condenser and the rad all sit above it. And this is an aftermarket intercooler. It's quite big. So we'll remove the intercooler. It just consists of 2 clamps, 2 bolts, I think a T40, maybe a T30, we'll see. And we'll bust this thing off and then access that valve. Here we go. So I'm just going to remove the intercooler bolts and this thing's going to fall on my face in 3, 2, 1. So the brand on it is AMS. It's quite thick, probably 8 inches thick. All right, guys, let's see what we're working with here. The rad is right here. This is the drain valve. So these are plastic and they do degrade, knowing BMW's plastic quality. I've already done that and changed it probably about a year ago. You can either use a very large Phillips or a flathead. And you want to take the blue portion out, not the green nut. That's supposed to stay in place. The blue piece is removable. If we take a closer look underneath here, I've got a brand new water pump in here. It's all aluminum. Normally, the outlet is plastic and mine failed. It cracked somewhere around here and it was leaking. I already went ahead and changed the outlet pipe and it has a protective heat shield on it. I've also replaced a few other hoses that relate to the water pump, and the thermostat is also brand new. Just so you guys know, this is a pain. It takes a few hours to replace this. I'm glad I've already got it addressed for the trip. Let's get draining. So we're gonna go ahead and open up the reservoir and it's gonna start gushing out. Look at that, guys. That is like perfection, the way it's draining. So clean. All right, we're fully drained. Let's pop that plug back in. I cleaned it off just to make sure there's no debris on the rubber seal in there. Time to remove this bloody fan out of the way, and it's gonna give us so much extra space to work. The next thing I wanna do is take this upper rad hose out, and it just consists of some quick release clips. So I'm gonna use a flathead, pull it back, pop this hose off. Same thing here. We got a little clamp with a flathead, and then the fan itself is held in with a T27 bolt right there. And then there's a clip on the side of the rad, which is broken, so it's easy for me to remove. And of course, the rad fan harness. So let's get to it. All right, now we can pop off this quick release. Just simply pull up the little paper clip thing, and there's one on this accessory line on the bottom. Hey, there we go, guys, we got it. Check this out, guys. We have a failure on the coolant hose. As you can see, the O-ring has ripped off. If we take a look at this side, see how the O-ring is recessed and it is kept in place by that plastic lip. What happens is that plastic lip will rip off and then the O-ring will fall out. So this hose is completely garbage anyways. And if you take a look at the bottom of the hose, look at all of that oil contamination here. And you can see the rubber pipe has actually swollen up a bit. So this pipe was ready to fail anyways. That's why I'm changing it. So this oil is probably from a leaking oil filter housing. So that's why I'm going to replace the oil filter housing gasket while I'm in here. So I'm not going to install a new line yet. We're going to take the oil filter housing apart, change the gaskets, then put our new hose in because we don't want this same issue happening to our brand new pipe. See what I mean, guys? There's that plastic lip that was supposed to hold the O-ring in place. It's stuck on the neck here. There we go. So this broke off the hose. Garbage. There we go. Hey! So baby steps, guys. You can't put too much pressure on this bracket here, otherwise you will puncture your rad. This is made out of plastic. So in combination of wiggling it and prying, it should come out. If it's not, you just gotta take your time. All right, guys, I'm gonna make my way to the bottom and see if I can pull it out. Oh! All right, guys, we got it removed. Unfortunately, there was some residual coolant still in there. So this coolant line should pop off now. Let's try and get this new lower rad hose installed. I am ready to replace the oil filter housing gaskets. So let's keep on trucking. We'll take the oil temp sensor off. This is my aftermarket oil temperature sensor to the DEFI gauge. We've got everything removed for now. We'll get the coolant temp sense removed just to get it out of the way. Let's get the brake booster line off from the vacuum pump. So there's two tabs on the bottom I gotta squeeze. So we got one bolt on here, it's an E10. We got another E10 on the bottom here, easily accessible, no biggie. This is where it gets complicated. If you guys can see half of the bolt, it's behind the intake manifold. What an absolute terrible design from BMW. This means the intake manifold needs to partially come off, which is not a big deal. I mean, all we got to really do is loosen all the 10mm bolts that's holding the intake manifold in place. Maybe some sensors need to be removed. The throttle body may need to be disconnected, the electrical and the coupler may need to come out. So we'll see. I ran out of SD card and I didn't realize it. And somewhere in between there, I managed to remove all of the bolts for the intake manifold, the coupler for the throttle body to my charge pipe. And that's basically it. So now that I've got this removed, check that out. We can finally see and access that E10 bolt that was hidden. So we don't need to fully remove it, but this is as far as you need to pull it out. Take a quick look at the intake valves, see the condition. Ooh, pretty gross, not gonna lie. So we're gonna have to walnut blast that, but that's gonna happen after the trip because I only have 5 days left. So this won't leave me stranded. Performance may not be the best it could be, but at least I know the condition of the valves, and we'll do that in a future video. There's our gasket. Not gonna lie, the gasket looks pretty good still, relatively soft. Doesn't hurt to change it anyways. It does look like there was some leaking happening here. I don't know if it was replaced by the previous owner, but you can see all the old oil buildup here, and this is not fresh. This has been here for a while. So we're gonna take this off, take the old seal off, clean it up real good. We'll clean up the body, and then we'll reinstall it. We can start cleaning up this housing and the surrounding areas. I'm just gonna use this rigid paper towel and plug the holes just to make sure no dirt ends up going in there. Yeah, let's just get a close-up of this area so you guys can see how disgusting it truly is. So this thing was leaking at some point, whether it was now or in the past. There's a lot of crud, a lot of buildup everywhere. So I'm gonna try my best to degrease this. I plugged off all the ports so I can spray the shit out of it and get rid of all of this dirt. So let's get cracking, and I'll show you the results right after. Let's wash it down. So I used my solvent to dissolve as much of the built-up grease as possible. Let's take a quick look at the progress here. I'm starting to see the aluminum parts rather than all that greasy oil that's built up with sand and all kinds of shit from the road. So this is all cleaned up nice. I used a razor blade just to shave off the skin and the buildup from the old gasket and whatever else built up in that area. So I've been cleaning up the alternator too because there was a lot of oil built up around there. Unfortunately, I can't get this area. Oh, gross. Look at that. Oh. Unfortunately, I can't get in there with the belt in the way. I can't get my brush in there. But this is a perfect opportunity to replace the belt because I've got everything opened up. And I'm also going to replace the tensioner and a lot of the pulleys while I'm in there. So our belt tensioner is right here. It's got a T60 Torx. It's quite huge. It's going to go in here, and then we're going to use our ratchet to release the tension in the belt. Take this belt off, but we need to get to the alternator so we can clean it up. What the f? Something not right here, guys. Holy Moses. Okay, guys, look at that nastiness. Let's keep cleaning. All right, let's get all of these pulleys off using a screwdriver. Hey, there goes one. So that's for the tensioner. And I got a T50 Torx on the tensioner. So to remove the pulley, it's lefty-loosey. We're just gonna crack it to the left. There we go. Look at this stuff. It's so nasty just because I've been degreasing it and it's been falling all over it. So here's the tensioner. It is spring-loaded. There's a lot of hair here. I've been finding a lot of hair on my belt. I don't know why, if something died in here. So this is what we call an idler. Still good. We're gonna change it anyways. We can see all that crud that's been hiding behind all the pulleys. There's another idler down there which we'll remove, and we'll keep degreasing all of this. That's a big boy. Check that out. Bearing's still good. It's still a good pulley. We're gonna clean it up and save it for spare parts, but we're gonna replace it for now. We're gonna pressure wash this for a very brief moment. I really want to get inside the alternator, get all that crud out, because all the crud that I was cleaning is falling into there, and I need to flush it. I can't just keep spraying solvent on it forever. Check this out, guys. This is so clean. It took me probably around an hour and a half or two, but it was well worth it because I feel very confident now in my alternator. That was the biggest thing that kept me going, was seeing how much grease and oil and hair and stones and dirt was plugging these ports. So if you look at the alternator as it spins, you can see there's a fan in there. As it spins, it draws air in to keep it cool. If it can't keep cool, it'll overheat and burn out. Don't worry about getting water in there. It is a complete myth. When you're driving in a heavy rainstorm, all that rainwater is going into the rad, into the condenser, through, and it's getting into here. When the fan turns on as well, it's splashing it. Rain gets on your engine when you drive. So don't worry about getting it wet. I blew it off with the air compressor. I'm not running it anytime soon, so this is going to dry off. And I'd rather have this thoroughly washed than having all that crud plugging the ports. The next thing I got to do is remove the intake manifold. Why? Because I do not trust the cylinder head right now. It looks completely filthy, and I'm almost positive I will have an intake manifold vacuum leak, boost leak, everything. So I have new seals to replace for the intake manifold. We're going to remove this whole assembly and change that and clean up the mating surfaces. All right, so I just unbolted the throttle body, and then I also removed that electrical panel, this like electrical box on the bottom, and then also some other accessories that were attached to it, including a vacuum line. So this puppy is ready to come out, and we'll change the intake manifold gaskets. Look how gross that is. Alrighty then, let's take a look at this. Okay, the rubber seals seem still okay. We'll change it anyways. Okay, check this out. So we got all 6 new gaskets installed. Now we have to prep the cylinder head to accept our intake manifold. Right now it's covered in dirt, so let's go over there and clean it up. Yikes, look at that. So if I were to just reinstall that intake manifold, guaranteed it would have leaked. There's so much sediment and buildup on here. We are gonna need walnut blasting 100%. But we can't do that right now. We're out of time. It still runs good. It's not built up enough to the point where it's restricting flow. It may affect high performance, but for just regular cruising, it'll probably be just fine. So I'm going to take a razor blade and a solvent, and I'm going to gently clean this and wipe it up a bunch of times and blow out each port with the air compressor. Just make sure no sediments enter the valves, even though there's already so much carbon and sediments in there as it is. Hey, okay, so I found an original nylon braided vacuum line with splits in it. This one appears to be an original to the vehicle. As you notice, I've replaced all of the other vacuum lines with this blue silicone. So we'll go ahead and remove this and change it now. I didn't even know this one existed until I took the intake manifold off. Here we go, let's get the intake manifold installed. It's going to be tricky. There's a lot of things that need to go on at the same time, so I'm going to try to coordinate that as best as I can without breaking anything. So I just put some white grease on the prongs that go into this electrical box here, just to ease the installation. Our gaskets are clean, ready to go. Our surface is flawless. It is so much cleaner than before. So I wanted to show you guys how clean we got the cylinder head for the intake valve ports here. So we'll go ahead and get that installed right now. Yeah, I think the trick here is getting the last bolt on, the stud in the back there. There we go. Now we can get the electrical panel. Shit, too soon, Junior. Too soon. We got to get the oil filter housing on first, because this is going to create a problem. So take this off, just pop it off a little. Since we're doing multiple things at the same time and replacing items while we're in there, now we can do the oil filter housing gasket. Here is our fully cleaned oil filter housing with the brand new gasket installed. Cleanliness is so important when it comes to these parts, because It's the oil system. You don't want any debris in there. You don't want to score your cylinder walls. You don't want to score your cam caps or your cam shafts or your rod bearings or create any oil pressure issues, etc. So this thing is ready to go on. I've also cleaned up the hardware. So we're going to go ahead and install it. We just got to move the intake manifold ever so slightly. So we're going to bolt this in little bit by little bit because we don't want the gasket to get pinched. Little here, little there, and then we'll torque it down at the very end. These don't need to be crazy tight, but they need to be snug. Okay, we may as well finish the job. I'm going to go ahead and remove these 3 13mm bolts, and we're going to see what's behind it. What kind of a gasket is there? Check this out. This is for our oil cooler relocation for the aftermarket one with the AN fittings. So that's our temperature sensor. These are the knobs. It appears this one has been grinded down to fit. This one has plenty of space to fit, so we'll clean this up and we'll replace that gasket as well. Here is our brand new gasket. Here is our freshly cleaned oil cooler plate adapter. So we will simply reinstall it with the bolts it came off with. And we'll tighten this down little bit by little bit. Now where were we? The intake manifold. All right, here's the throttle body all cleaned up, ready to go. So we got, what is this? The evap line or the EGR, one of the two, and then electrical harness. That's all it is. And then 4 10mm bolts. Now is a good opportunity to replace our coolant temperature sensor. It's a 22 mil. Hopefully it comes out. Yep. Let's compare them real quick. They look the exact same, just one's a little cleaner. Okay, we got our copper washer on there, which will create our seal. Let's bolt that up. Boom. Nice and tidy. Now we can get this outlet installed. These always break, guys. This is a brand new one. You can get aluminum ones, but I just opted for an OEM one. All right, stay tuned for part 2 of this series. Next week, we're gonna finish off the belt, transmission fluid, and the differential fluid, all in preparation for this road trip. So fingers crossed all goes well. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can keep up to date with this project. Peace out for now, guys.